If you want to build your own brand, realistically, you have to brute force your way as a small creator, small business to kind of, meet other people, other businessmen.
This is Uncensored Grill with Tipo. No filters, no safety nets, just intelligence under pressure.
I know about growth and I can analyze other people and see how they are doing it. And I can just say what I'm observing. Like, I don't need authority of I've done this to talk about how someone else is doing it. Today we are seeing a lot of hiring from Twitter, and I think it's great, because a lot of people are building really good personal brands on Twitter, and they are being, I guess, hired by some good companies, so it's great for them. I think I've always been Kelano the builder, whether I lived in the UK, Turkey, or Dubai.
Please don't say anything that will get you kicked out of here.
No, of course. The reply guy industry is cooked. And yeah, I think we were the first reply guy agency to just solely focus on reply. I believe we will never see the NFT hype of 2021, 2022. And I don't think a new collection will reach out $100,000 floor price.
In Web3, the founders, do you think they are building solutions or they are building excuses? Today, on Uncensored Grill, we are staying with someone who didn't just watch the Web3 culture form. He shaped a whole corner of it. From France to UK to Dubai, from Web2 show promoter to growth at Binance, from building the original reply guy army to now creating a payroll tool for agency and brands. Kelano, aka Baptist, is the guy who sees the market before the market even know it exists. And he's not afraid of a hot take. He's the man who told Lucanet to his face that we'll never see another 2021 style bull run again, especially for NFTs. Today, we are going deep into product, culture, chaos, controversy, and clarity. Welcome to the Grey Baptiste. How are you?
Thank you for the very kind introduction. I'm doing great. I'm just working as usual, so nothing really new in my life. But your introduction was a lot of flashbacks, so I appreciate that. Yeah. And what about you? How are you doing?
I know. I'm doing wonderfully good. I've never been this good in my entire life. It's as if I was living a double life, but doing this, I'm now living my dream, what I'm supposed to be doing, and everything is just falling into places for me. So yes, thank you.
Very nice. I watched I'm not sure if it was the first interview, but I watched the one with Leon. I have to say, like, you're asking really good questions, so I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Good to know that. And luckily, we love to start with the icebreakers. So I'm gonna throw some your way. If I open your notes app right now, what's the last random idea you wrote down that nobody else has heard about you yet?
Well, the only thing I put in my notes on my phone is just my gym workouts. So it's often about, what workout should I do and stuff like that. Other than that, what I tend to put in my notes is just small ideas that I can turn into, businesses. I don't put like philosophical stuff or like life introspection in there, but if I have an idea on the run, like, we'll probably get into that. But the agency I'm running right now, we are servicing clients to help them improve their systems, scale their business, etc. And some of those things can sometimes be turned into apps, softwares, SaaS products, and that's usually kind of like what I will just write in my notes if I'm thinking about something on the road or, outside of the house. But most of the time, you're just going to find gym workouts in there.
You are always the kind of man that loves to do businesses, build products. So yes, I'm not surprised in any way that that's what it's in your notes app. So since we are done with the icebreaker, I'd love to hit you with degree number one. You started as a show promoter in Web2. Loud rooms, loud people, loud expectations. Do you think that background made you sharper in Web3, or did it almost ruin you before you even begin?
But yeah, I think, it's not so different from Web3 if you really think about it, right? Because it's really about building communities, right? So the way we were organizing our raves, so it was very underground culture, like the techno industry, underground raves. So it's not like the club flashy popping bottles industry that you see sometimes on Instagram. It's a lot more grungy, dark, and underground. And like we didn't have a lot of money at the time, and we knew that we wanted obviously to get as many people as possible to buy tickets, for our next rave. And we brute forced our way into building a community. We would be going out every single weekend, sometimes Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning for the after until 2 p.m. And let me tell you, you don't survive 2.5 days of raving on water and pasta, if you know what I mean. But that's another conversation. And like, we had a goal, like it was like two or three of us. And we always had a goal that when we would leave the rave, we had to have 5 new Facebook friends. At the time, it was Facebook. Okay, I'm that old, and like our goal was just to make connections, to meet new people every single time. So we would often kind of like split out, and say like, "Hey, see you in 2 hours. Go and do your thing. Go and meet people." And then you just build connections. Some people became really, really good friends, met in the smoking area of the rave. Some people were a little bit more transactional. And I feel like that's very much the same in Web3, right? Like if you want to build your own brand, realistically, you have to brute force your way as a small creator, small business to kind of, meet other people, other businessmen, other startup founders, other creators. So I think it was, I see a lot of similarities between both worlds. Um, so I think, everything I've done in the past has just been compounded experience that somehow can be translated into whatever is next, So it was just definitely formative years
Talking
and
of
never breaking years.
talking of building a brand, there was something you used to do. I think that was 2022. Yes. And I want you to share more about it. If I could remember correctly, you used to talk about the bigger guys when you were small, and then you talked about them, and they gave you visibility. How did you come up with that strategy? Is this something you learned from the Web2 world, or is it something you just sat down and then think about it? Or is there a concept, a marketing concept, or a branding concept behind that framework?
Yeah, I would love to take credit and say, I'm a genius. Came with this all on my own, but it's just a pretty standard content creation concept, I guess. And I was talking with someone, I forgot his name actually. I would love to give him a shout out, but yeah, I was talking with some dude actually in Alex Finn, aka NFT God at the time. Discord, we had this 1% club, which I was part of, and there was this guy that was doing like masterclasses or whatever they was called, and he said like, "Oh, I've been trying this where I do threads about big podcasts on YouTube, and he was doing like Web2 podcasts, not Web3 related, right?" And he was like, "Oh, I've had 3 of those in the last month that were retweeted by the podcast founder, effectively, right?" And those tweets got like 50K impressions, 100K, 200K, whatever the number is. But this guy had a bigger account than me at the time, but maybe 10, 20K followers. And I was like, man, I can definitely apply that to Web3. I can just talk about those creators that I look up to. And, I have a good marketing background, I guess. So I've always been into growing social media accounts. And I thought to myself, well, I can't really tell you how to grow on social media. Like, what is it that I'm going to enjoy talking about on my content? And like, I'm not the biggest on-chain activist. I do my on-chain stuff, but I'm not someone like Moritz, for example, who, or
They are
Legendary,
not
who's,
peaks.
yeah, like I'm not transacting all day, farming 50 different protocols, right? So I was like, I can't really start creating content about my on-chain activity effectively, because while I do probably more than a lot of people, I'm not elite or top tier in farming different things, right? So I was like, well, I know a lot about marketing, growing accounts, growing brands, but I have 2,000 followers, so I don't feel like I have the authority to talk about doing that when I've literally never tweeted or I have a very small account, very very little engagement. That's when I just decided to take my Twitter seriously. But I was like, hey, I know about growth and I can analyze other people and see how they are doing it. And I can just say what I'm observing. Like, I don't need authority of I've done this to talk about how someone else is doing it. Right. So that was like my whole angle when I first started on Twitter. And yeah, I was just basically writing threads about, people. Those people include Moritz, Whale, Frank D. Gods, people will know about this
Yeah,
thread. I wrote about Sappy Seals, like loads of different things, and yeah, I was basically getting a retweet pretty much every single time, and I was doing pretty good numbers, I guess, considering my account size at the time. And yeah, I
definitely.
rinsed and repeated that strategy for about 6 months nonstop, and then I kind of branched down to do other things once I got a little bit of distribution.
And yeah, I could tell you categorically right now that that framework is still working. I think it's a psychological effect because if you talked about me and then you tagged me to it, I'm reposting.
Yeah, like if it's end of any
That's for
value,
sure.
right?
Yeah, if it's of any value, yeah, I'm reposting easily. Most of the people that clipped our first episode of this podcast, they got retweeted easily because they went into it art, they created value out of it, and Leon did the same thing as well.
Yeah,
So if
I
you're
think there's a
an
sweet
up and
spot
coming
though.
creator,
Like I think there's a sweet spot right on this. Like if you write a thread about Elon Musk, like the chances of him paying attention to that and retweeting it is pretty small, right? So you have to get in a sweet spot where someone is still in there are levels above you, but they're not in the stratosphere where they will never
yeah,
even see what you're doing, right? So
notice.
I think you just have to get that sweet spot where someone like, if someone writes a good piece of content about me or about you, like we are maybe considered a bigger account than them, but we're not yet at a level where, it
We are not the
happens every
biggest.
single day.
Yeah, yeah. So, moving on, I love to ask when you landed that role with Binance, with under a year experience of Web3 experience, rather, what did you tell them, or what did you tell yourself that made you believe you could pull it off? And the reason why I ask this question is this: most people will say, "Okay, I just got into Web3 under 2 years. I don't have previous experience. I haven't worked with any project yet." So, do you think, or is there something you did back then that someone could replicate today and they will be in a similar position as you were back then?
Well, I think it's actually a lot easier today than it was back in
Mm.
2022. Um, just to kind of give you a little bit of context. So I got into NFTs in 2021, late summer, and I got pretty terminally online doing a lot of research, trading NFTs a lot in Q4 2021, early 2022. And I was using this tool to snipe NFTs. For the OGs, you will know that back in the days when a hype mint would launch, OpenSea would basically crash out. So we were not able to refresh OpenSea. You couldn't see the reveal for 5-10 minutes most of the time. And there were, I guess, third-party tools that people built. The one I was working at was called Compass. There were NFT Sharks, famous OG one, like a bunch of tools like this. And I was using their platform, which was free at the beginning. And then they launched an NFT to make this platform token gated. And when I heard that they were going to launch this NFT, I jumped on their Discord and, kind of, I guess, started being a community member. And then after a couple of weeks, they were looking for a moderator. I really wanted to move to Web3 full time. So I kind of, said, hey, I want to be your moderator. And that was my first free job at the time. And then I worked with them for a couple of months. I guess I got a bit deeper in their ecosystem, started helping out on other things, including managing their Twitter account, managing the Discord. And that's basically how I got my first job. At some point, they were like, hey, you're helping us a lot. We want to pay you. What is your availability? And I said, hey, I'm working full time right now. This is how much I'm making at my job. If you pay me the same thing, I'm going to quit tomorrow and I'm going to do this full time. They said yes, so literally the next day I ended up giving my resignation at my job, so that was how I got my first job in Web3 from free to full time effectively. And I stayed with these guys for about 6 months. It was already 2022, so the bear market was starting up. And so then I'm going to branch into how I got this job at Binance. But just for context, I'm a very old person in this industry. I'm closing on 40 next year. So I've had a long life before joining Web3. And I've been in marketing for the past 10 years. I've worked at really big marketing agencies on, pretty big clients like Shell, Ferrari, Boohoo, Adidas. So I've got a lot of experience in, I guess, traditional marketing, And when I applied at Binance, the role was growth manager. So what I think was the big difference for me is that I had a pretty traditional marketing experience. And I think, today we are seeing a lot of hiring from Twitter. And I think it's great, because a lot of people are building really good personal brands on Twitter and they are being, I guess, hired by some good companies, so it's great for them. I think there is potentially one little downside that I think we're going to see over the next 12 to 24 months is that a lot of those people are very young. I'm talking 18 to 25 maybe. And I think they often lack traditional experience. And, the plus is that you are terminally online, you're hyper tuned with whatever is happening on CT. You understand the culture really well. But I think, to work at a company like Binance, there is a lot of processes and, there is a lot of stakeholders that are coming from a very traditional background. Some of them don't even really know about Web3 and about crypto. They just, doing a role and the industry is almost irrelevant to the role they are doing, unfortunately, because I think that's also a downside for these companies. But I think, when you start working at the bigger companies, there is a corporate element behind it. And I think I had that corporate element, understanding of, managing teams, managing stakeholders, working with large teams in multiple departments, reporting to a CEO, a CFO, a CTO, all that stuff, right? So I think I had a pretty unique case where my CV had a really strong Web2 experience, and I was in this space for about 10 months. And I think I was probably the most NFT focused person in, I guess, the bunch of people who applied. So I think I had kind of an advantage where I understood the NFT culture, CT, and all that stuff. And I also had a good corporate traditional background. So I think that's not easy to replicate because I've worked in marketing agencies for a long time, worked on multi-million pound or dollars budgets, campaigns, and all that stuff. So I'd love to say, hey, you just have to vibe on CT, but the reality is, I think my position was quite unique, which is why I got this position. And I think, this
Yeah.
has changed a lot these days. Your profile is your CV. If you're somewhat pretty good at Twitter, I think you can get hired. I think it's somehow a fairly poor filter of talent, but I think it's working right now. So I'm very curious to see how those hires are going to turn out in 12 months.
Well, I think two things here. You don't see someone with a traditional marketing experience, someone that has worked with Adidas, someone that has worked with Ferrari, and then you chose to ignore them. And I think that really helped you as well. And what you said about the downside of hiring on Twitter and then hiring the young ones. Have you seen a tweet from is it Polychain or what's this prediction market?
Yeah, Polymarket.
Polymarket. Have you seen a tweet from their Twitter account
Yeah.
made people were rich?
Are you referring to
It
a
was a
specific tweet?
yeah. It's I think let me check my phone. I think I have the tweet. They deleted the tweet, but I have it.
Yeah, the Indian
Yeah,
reference.
yeah. The Indian, the Nigerian.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about what you said about the age brackets. If someone like yourself, you are clocking 40 in less than a year. If you happen to be the intern of Polymarket, you will never make that tweet.
Definitely not.
We never do it.
Definitely not.
We never do it. Yeah. And that's the downside to, just hiring the youngins. They are hot blooded. They think everything coming head makes sense out in the world. So
Yeah, and
yes,
I think that's a perfect example. And like at Binance, for example, we had a lot of approval that was needed to tweet from the main account, and there was a rigorous process. And I was working with Alex on Chain, who's now the CT lead at Coinbase, actually. So he was I guess I was working on Binance NFT and he was working on Binance.com, right? So the global website. But we were always interacting, I guess, and getting approval from Alex. And, he has a very traditional corporate understanding as well. And when you work on an account that has 1 million, 5 million, 10 million followers, you have, or Polymarket, I don't know how many followers they have, but I'm sure they're big accounts as well. They've got like 820K. Like you have to understand that you can be funny, but you have a pretty big responsibility of carrying the brand's perception to the world. And I think, if you don't have any experience at all and you've just been shit posting on your own account, it's a very, very different repercussion if you fuck up. And I think that's what maybe a lot of people tend to miss a little bit, that kind of, I guess, understanding of what can be said, what can be funny, and what should be maybe kept in the draft.
Yes. Yeah. And I think going forward, there is going to be some change. There's going to be some change. And I'm sure that when this episode is out, there's going to be loads of debates, especially about the hiring from Twitter. My brand is my CV. It's going to be an hot take, definitely. And I can't wait to see people's reaction. So moving on, Kelano, you've lived in 3 different countries. UK,
4, actually.
Dubai.
I've lived in Turkey as well.
Oh, okay, yeah. I can remember the hair thing. Yeah, that's good. I'll probably go to Turkey as well. Do you recommend?
For holidays, yeah, great. Especially if you come in with dollars, or euros or pounds. Yeah, great place for holiday. Absolutely.
How about for my head?
From here?
No, for my head.
For your head, or for hair transplant. I think you're past the stage where you can do it, if I'm just being honest. So you may just be a couple of years too late on that.
Okay, okay, but you don't know my age.
I know your age.
How are you so sure? Oh, okay, okay. Let's keep my age.
Yeah, it's close to mine. That's all I'm going to say.
So, in these 4 countries, where do you feel most like Kelano the builder, and where do you feel most like Kelano the outsider?
Um, so I would say I don't feel like a country represents how I behave and what I do. I'm just here. Currently, I live in Dubai just because, it's a great place to be in for the industry I'm in. Obviously, taxes are a pretty big point. I've been earning 100% of my income in crypto basically for the past 4 years, or like 97% of my income is crypto, like stable coins, etc. So it's just, obviously a very good place to be. I think I've always been Kelano the builder, whether I lived in the UK, Turkey, or Dubai. I was a teenager when I lived in France, so not as much. I was more Kelano the wanker at the time. So yeah, I think I'm just naturally someone that likes to build things. To do the 0 to 1 is probably the part I enjoy the most when I build a business. So yeah, I think I'm just naturally a builder, and I don't really think of myself as
So,
an outsider, anyways, anytime.
talking
Um,
about talking
but
about building from 0 to 1. Have you read the book 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel?
no, I haven't. No,
Oh, you should. You should check it
yeah,
out.
I'm taking a note on that.
You're really going to love
Actually,
it.
just one thing
Yeah.
I will add on this. Potentially, living in Turkey was the only time where I was not able to communicate with anyone in my surrounding, basically, because I lived on the Asian side of Istanbul, and basically no one really speaks English over there, which is not a critic. Is I'm just stating facts. In the building where I live, it was a brand new gated community, effectively, where it was mostly Turkish people living there, and so no one actually spoke English. Like literally, like
How
three
do you
people in
cope?
the entire building, right? So it was very, and the city as a whole is not as English speaking as other
Friendly
countries.
as
Like if you go
Sweden.
to Holland, for example, it's not their first language, but everyone speaks English there because it's taught at school. Like in Sweden, all that stuff. Germany, everybody is basically bilingual from like school. Whereas Turkey, they don't have that as much. So I would say maybe the outsider was in Turkey because the language barrier was the strongest I've ever faced.
Wow. Must have been a struggle for you.
A little bit. I was Google translating my way through life for a year.
For how many years?
Just under a year. Yeah, we came
Just under a
in with
year.
a tourist visa, and then for those who are somewhat familiar, Erdogan, who was the president at the time, got re-elected, and so that was in 2022, I think. And he's been president for like 20 years already. And when he got
Yeah.
reelected, he was basically cracking down on tourist visas and was making it a little bit more difficult than it was to renew a tourist visa. So we ended up not being able to renew our visa, and that's why we came to Dubai a little bit earlier than we had originally planned, effectively.
I mean, it's all good. Dubai is good. Dubai feels like home right now. So, Kilan, I want to ask you something personal, really, really personal. Your wife is Nigerian, Lagos, Nigeria. What has living with someone from that culture taught you about patience, ambition, or madness?
So patience, ambition, or
Madness.
manners, or
Yeah,
madness,
madness, madness.
madness,
Like,
madness.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, Thankfully, she's not hearing this right now, so it's great. Um I mean, I guess patience is just. I'm not sure if it's
Before you go on, Kilano,
Yeah.
Before you go, please don't say anything that will get you kicked out of the house.
No, no,
I don't
of
want you to get
course,
in
of
trouble.
course. Being with someone from a different culture, I guess, is very interesting because we have different ways of approaching life, thinking about things, or raised differently, I guess. So also our parents, I mean, my wife grew up in Nigeria, but she moved to England when she was a teenager, so she still has a lot of British influence, I guess, in her way of life. Whereas her parents, for example, are very Nigerian. They moved to England when they were already in their 30s or 40s, right? So I guess it's just very interesting how we have very different cultures, very different ways of thinking, obviously different food, and you know, yeah, very different, right? So I think it's just great. Like I personally enjoy, seeing other cultures and seeing how other people do things in general, what other people like to eat, etc. So for me, it's always been great, and I think it's just the more you can expose yourself to other ways of life, like the more you can learn and the more you can grow, and you can always pick something. Like I'm not going to say, oh, I want to pick everything from the Nigerian culture or the Turkish culture or the Dubai culture, but there is always something you can take home and think, hey, you know what, I really like this. I'm gonna take this for my own life, and I think that's for me like the biggest advantage. The second biggest advantage is I love rice, right? And Nigerian, they make the best rice with jollof. So I love eating a good jollof, and I love the food as well. So whenever my wife makes Nigerian food, it's usually a good day for me.
Yeah, it's really a good day. How many years together now?
6.5, I think now. 6.5, yeah, or 7 soon actually. Yeah, 7 years soon.
So 7 years together. What's your favorite thing about her?
um, how she always supports my dreams, and my craziness in wanting to do different things all the time and starting new businesses from zero. She's always supportive of that. And I think, I'll
Yeah,
always
one.
say for most people who are trying to build a business, like having a partner who may not necessarily understand what you're trying to build or care for what you're trying to build, but is not, I guess, preventing you from doing it or trying to stop you or slow you down in building the life of your dreams. I think it's probably the biggest asset you can have in a partner. So I think I'm very lucky that
That's beautiful.
she did not understand crypto when I decided to go full time in crypto, but she was like, that's what you want to do, that's what you believe in, I will support you
I
even if I
support
don't
you.
necessarily fully understand it. And as long as we're not going to become homeless, like it's fine by me. I support it, and I think that's, I'm saying that as a joke, but genuinely, I think most people who are in relationships are always can be slowed down or scared to take the leap forward because the other half doesn't agree with something, doesn't think that's the way forward, etc. So I'm personally very lucky that I've got a partner who supports, I guess, me dreaming and taking action on those dreams.
God bless the union. So talking about culture, you created one, the reply guy culture. What moment made you realize, is this an actual system or just jokes?
A bit of both, maybe. No, but I will preface this by saying, I was ghostwriting in from 2023. I started ghostwriting, and I quickly, went from one client to three, four, five, six, and it was my early days of ghostwriting. So I mean, I was scheduling the content for my clients effectively, and I had a few clients that asked, hey, you just posted this for me. Can you also check if you can do some replies to that thread or that post that went out just for a bit of engagement, And I was like, I appreciate you, but I'm a copywriter. I'm not a reply guy. And I got the question from one client, two clients, three clients, four clients, over the space of like 3, 4 months. And if you are a good entrepreneur, when you start seeing a
Seeing a
recurring
pattern.
problem, a pattern, right? A recurring problem, you have to ask yourself, like, well, can I solve this problem, and can I monetize this solution? So I was like, that's interesting, and I thought I'm gonna try and hire a reply guy and upsell this to my existing clients. So at first, it was just an upsell for my existing clients, right? And I remember I hopped on calls with Alexis Building, Leon, Legendary. I was asking them, like, hey, is that a service that you would think is interesting? And like, they were not even my clients, right? They were just friends. So I'm not saying they were my clients, just to clarify on that. And they were like, man, that sounds like a really good idea, to be honest. So if I was your client, I would probably use this as well. So I kind of, I guess, vetted a few friends and got the green light. So I hired my first reply guy, Emilios, who you guys may know as the Xit guru advisor these days. But he was my first reply guy. We basically got three clients, I think, from our existing clients. And then I thought to myself, you know what, I can probably sell this solution as a standalone service. And then, just, you know, bought a domain name like the reply guy.xyz, built a quick website in a couple of hours. And then I launched the reply guy. I think it was in January of 2024. So almost 2 years ago now. And I think we were the first reply guy agency to just solely focus on replies. And I guess there was a gap in the market. We had no competition for the first, I would say, 6 to 8 months. So it was a very, very good growth for the first half year. And then, we started seeing other people noticing. Even I had some of my own reply guys or girls that ended up, seeing this opportunity and thought they could do it themselves, and decided to leave and build their own reply guy agency as well. So that's kind of how the story started.
A lot of people copied the style, but only few people understood the strategy behind it. What was one thing the copycat never understand or never understood?
Well, I think it comes back to, once again, a lot of the people who copied me were very young, and like, I just want to clarify, I have nothing against young people, but I guess they were just not as focused on delivering a service beyond the replies. And what I mean by that is, like, we had a really extensive report that we were delivering for the clients. Like, we try to make this as professional as possible, and I think sometimes I know, because I've seen the behind the scene a lot in other people, and I know some people were not. Here we go, my focus was off. And they were just not as professional as they could have been on the back end of it. Doing the replies is just one part of the business, but can you, make sure, I guess, you have a good communication with your clients, with your reply guys, like a good system. Putting systems in place, I guess, was probably the invisible side of the business that was harder to replicate for most people.
So, what advice? What advice would you give anyone listening or watching later that they wanted to do this reply guy of a thing? What would you give them as an advice they must do for them?
Don't do it. The reply guy industry is cooked. I think, just to give you more stories on this. So when I went to NFT Paris, I think it was in 2024. Me and Leon Abud flew together. We stayed together for that week. We rented an Airbnb together. And at the time, I was already thinking, when ChatGPT came out, I was like, man, like, maybe, we could create an AI bot or an AI agent. That was before, the AI agent mania that was last year with Virtual's AI agent, Elisa, and all that stuff. It was before that, so that's just to tell you, like, how early I've been thinking about this. I was like, man, with ChatGPT and stuff, we can probably create, an app or whatever that would, like, do the replies for you automatically, right? So I ended up meeting with the dev in Paris, and we were looking to build effectively an AI reply guy, right? So the AI slop that you see today is what we were trying to build a year and a half ago. And at the time, it was like super expensive. We were looking at 20K in dev cost. Now you can just build your own with ELISA for basically free, right? But at the time, this whole infrastructure did not exist, you know? And then, you know, I remember talking about this with Emilios a lot. And we were kind of worried that the quality was just not good enough, you know? I was really close to pulling the trigger on the money and like get the devs to build this, but I was always worried that the quality was just not good enough, you know. And I was really thinking about how can we make sure it has historical context, you know. I was like, oh, can we make sure the bot has access to your DMs, you know, to understand if you ever had conversations with that person. Like for example, if it sees, oh, you know, Kelano is using our bot and Kelano has you know, 2 years of history of DM with Depot. So clearly we can see like contextually Depot and Kelano know each other, right? Can we find ways to read all the different interactions we've had on Twitter, etc.? So because just basic replies always lacked emotional intelligence, humor, sarcasm, context, and were never really able to pick whether I was just replying to someone for the first time or it was actually a long time friend, right? So I ended up canning the idea because I was like, it's just not good enough yet. Like I think it will get good enough, but it just wasn't. And then since we've seen obviously the rise of AI slop in the comments, AI reply guys are now, I think, probably doing 60% of the replies on Twitter in general. So I think,
Oh,
you
that's
know,
just
maybe more, yeah. So I think it was a good business when I got into it because it was a blue ocean. There was no competition. If I had the opportunity to get back into it today, I absolutely wouldn't do it. I think it's just very commoditized. And I think the competition is extremely stiff right now. So I probably would say, like, you can be a reply guy and try to have your own clients building an entire agency behind reply guys. I think like don't do it if you want to do it, like go for it, you know. Obviously there is always money to be made, but one thing I would say is work with brand accounts rather than personal accounts because they are just way better, way more likely to succeed for you. Because if you're working with a personal account, like it's very hard to know what that person thinks, like their opinions. And if you're working on brand accounts, you're always going to comment on things that are happening, I guess, in the market. And you may give an opinion that the owner of the account does not agree with, or you may interact with someone they are actually close friends with. And then it's easy to see, well, that's not Depot. You know, why the fuck are you replying that? I literally had a coffee with you yesterday, which is actually a story I had with a well-known founder we started working with, and on the first day, literally the first day, um, we replied to someone who happened to be a real life friend, and he had a coffee with this dude the day before, right? So he messaged us in Telegram. He's like, "Oh, dude, like this guy is my IRL friends." He messaged me. He's like, "Is someone using your account? You know, because that doesn't sound like you." And that's when I realized, like, working with personal accounts is just way harder. So I would say if you somehow want to build a reply guy agency, uh, focus on brand accounts. You know, there is way less personal interaction level, and you're less likely to fuck up. So that would be my biggest advice.
thank you so much. I mean, that was really, really good. Anyone watching later will probably build a system from what you just said. If they are smart enough, they could build a system from what you just said. But
Yeah,
but
there is money
but
to be
moving
made,
on,
you know.
you definitely there is money to be made. There's money to be made. I couldn't agree more. But moving on, you are the type that sees gap and builds something instantly, ranging from reply guy, and now you are building a payroll too. Where does that instinct come from? Frustration, necessity, or ego?
I think, you know, we're just in the greatest era of building. There has never been a better time to be an entrepreneur than 2025. and it's the worst time it's ever going to be for the next 10, 15, 20, 50 years. I think we're just in a place where, you know, the tech behind around us allows you to just turn ideas into things effectively. And you know, I've had an entrepreneurial spirit, I guess, for a long time. I've built multiple businesses before being in Web3. And, you know, I think if you see something where if you have a problem and there is nothing that allows you to solve this problem, that's usually a very, very good place to try and build something. You know, if you've done your market research and there is nothing that allows you to solve this problem through an existing software, an existing product, an existing service, then you know it's unlikely that you're the only one with that problem, right? So if you can do a little bit of research and say, hey, you know, speak to a few friends who are in similar positions as you and are like, hey, do you also have this problem? If you do, how do you solve it, right? And if they're like, yeah, that's a fucking pain in the ass, okay, well, you're onto something, right? And my goal is always, you know, can I build a business that doesn't have a huge amount of competition just yet? If I'm, you know, if I'm new to this, I guess, sector, to this service, to this industry, and that still has a decent amount of of people with that problem, right? Because if the total customer pool is 5, then you have a pretty limited market size, right? But if you think, hey, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people who have the same problem as me, then you know it's a great place to build. So that's kind of how I think about things. Um, and also, I just want to say one thing as well. Like, you know, a lot of people, a lot of my own friends who are also agency owners, service providers, effectively, they all want to build a huge business. You know, I'm talking about 7 figures a month, 6 figures a month in revenue, building a big team, 10, 15, 20, 50 employees, you know, and grow as fast as they can, as high as they can. And like, I respect that, you know, I'm super happy for these guys. I just, I am way more keen on the sort of solopreneur life, you know. I've built teams before. I've managed pretty big teams as well. And, you know, I come to a place where I realize I actually really enjoy working with a very, very small team, you know, whether it's just myself or 1 or 2 people. So I'm always trying to think, how can I build a business that requires as few people as possible to take it to a decent, you know, monthly revenue? And like, it's probably not businesses that aren't going to make, you know, 500K a month in revenue, but I'm always thinking, well, you know, I can make a business that makes 50K a month in revenue and it's a 92% profit margin. And it's just me. Like, I'm very, very happy with that, you know? So that's also one thing I always kind of analyze. Like this payroll tool, it's a, just to give you a bit of context, it's a crypto payroll for employees or KOLs, and it allows you to pay multiple people from uploading a Google Sheet or, you know, creating your team, I guess, in app directly, and then pay in one click. And that comes from working with my own clients who are working with many KOLs, and every week they have to spend 2 hours, 3 hours going through all the different payment they have to send, and they spend 2 or 3 hours a week on that. And I was like, man, I know for sure the tech is, it's possible to make multi-transaction processing in a wallet if you have the authorization level, right? So I was like, well, I'm going to try and build this, and then, you know, those people were like, yeah, that's so good, we're going to use that moving forward. And it's something that once I've built it, you know, there is not a big team required to run this in the back end, you know. It's probably going to be me and 1 or 2 people maximum outside of the dev to maintain this software effectively and to market it. The reply guy, it was just me and Emilios. Then we had the reply guys as contractors effectively, but it was just me for a long time. It was just me, and then I hired Emilios to do my job effectively. He will confirm that. So I was free to do other things. And that's the kind of business I enjoy. The one man army that is not necessarily a 7-figure a month revenue, but if you pocket all the profits, you're probably making the same as someone with 10 employees doing 5 times more revenue than you, or 10 times more revenue than you. And that's kind of how I think about
Keep it
businesses.
as small as possible.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's the right way. I'm just saying it's my way.
Definitely, definitely. There is a rumor going on that I would love your thoughts on. Discord chatters, Telegram groups. So in Web3, the founders, do you think they are building solutions or they are building excuses?
I mean, hopefully, at least both. In the worst case scenario, um, I mean, I think it's hard to find PMF, like product market fit, in crypto, just because adding a tech layer on top of things we're already doing every day is effectively adding steps, right? Um, Web 2 is signing up through, like, Web 1 is signing up through a password and a username. Web 2 is signing up through social media platforms, or, like, through third party, like signing up through Google, signing up through Twitter, through Facebook. That's what Web 2 is technically. And Web 3 is signing through a wallet, right? And if you think about it, like, Web 2 works fantastically well, right? I sign up to most platforms through Gmail, right? I don't create passwords anymore, nor usernames. And I think, the problem with crypto is that if you're trying to create platforms for Web 2 users, you're adding an extra layer of friction. They have to sign through a wallet, or they have to sign through Gmail, for example. And then, we have seen a lot of products where you sign up through Gmail and you have the wallet that's created for you. It's a custodial solution. So it's kind of like invisible tech, and that tends to work well. But for decentralized tech, like, there is no other way. You need to sign up through a wallet. And I think, unfortunately, we haven't really found enough ways to make this completely seamless, right? I think you have really, really good platform these days. Like, I'm not a US citizen, so I can't use it, but I believe Kalshi allows you to not have any Web3 knowledge to use it. I think Polymarket is still a decentralized platform because you have to connect your wallet to add funds, right? But a platform like Kalshi that uses the tech and makes it completely invisible is a fantastic solution. So I think that's the big problem yet to be solved with Web3, is that we're technically adding friction to the end solution rather than making it easier in many cases. So I don't think that's building excuses. I think that's just the nature of things. And that means we need people who understand Web3 to actually get into crypto focused product. So that's just one thing. And then, are people making excuses? I think that's just the same as, any other industry. There is always people making excuses, and people making things happen. And I think, we are no different. So there is always going to be a big portion of people making excuses, blaming, the weather, Trump, anything, other than looking within and take accountability.
Going forward, it's all about building seamlessly instead of creating another friction.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So moving on. The argument, your argument with Luca Nets, did you feel misunderstood, or did you feel like the space just hides from reality? Free to give
Um,
the context
yeah,
for
I'll give
those
you.
that
I'll
are
give the
maybe
context,
watching.
right? So I think about a year ago now, I put out a tweet, and I think
Oh,
I might
brilliant. Yes.
paraphrase it, but the tweet was saying, I believe we will never see the NFT hype of 2021, 2022, and I don't think a new collection will reach out $100,000 floor price ever again for, like, a PFP, basically, right? And so then I think Luca So I just want to be clear on the wording, right? A new collection. That means, a newly minted collection. Like a collection doesn't exist yet at the
Not the
time of
old ones.
writing, and will come out in the future. I don't think it will ever reach 100K floor price again. So then I guess Luca kind of jumped in the comments and said, "Do you want to take a bet?" And I think he was maybe misreading my tweet, or the tweet was just not written well enough to be crystal clear, like it's also on me. And it was like, yeah, Pudgy Penguin will. And I kind of responded, it was like, yeah, Pudgy Penguin is not a new collection. So, I think some OG collections may reach that floor price again, but, that's not a new collection in my eyes. And then this tweet did the rounds of Twitter effectively. And I think Pudgy Penguin actually reached 100K floor price just before the airdrop. But, I am still winning since that tweet was published. No new collection, i.e., fresh collection, ever reached 100K in floor price in the last year and a half. The closest we got, I think, was Hyper from Hyperliquid, which I think peaked at like 60 or 70K. I'm not sure exactly the dollar value. But yeah, that was kind of, I guess, that tweet. And, I'm still pretty confident in what I said. It doesn't make sense that as the supply of NFTs and collections grow, we are just diluting, right? In 2021, we only had Ethereum basically as like the chain that had 90% of the market share. We now have Solana. We now have many chains who don't have a lot of volumes, but they're still offering NFTs, I guess, as support. And we now have gaming. I think gaming is probably the best adoption of crypto, of NFTs as a tech. And we will see larger and larger collections over time because 10K is not enough to build a community around. And that's why Pudgy Penguin has two collections, because they wanted to increase the number of people that could join the community. They have multiple collections. I think they have the rods as well. Like they have more than just the main Pudgy. They have the little ones and other things, right? And like 10K, if you have a perfect 10K owners, 10K holders, then your community is actually capped at 10K, which is nothing, right? For a worldwide brand. So the 10K model is not going to be lasting forever. At some point, we'll see more open. What's the name? Like when the collection doesn't end, like everyone can own one, and which or way larger supplies, right? So the more supply there is, the more the prices go down, right? It's pretty simple. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the NFT as a whole. I think the tech is great. I believe in NFTs as tech, but also it's important to not be blind and say like NFT PFP collections were the biggest part of the market in 2021, 2022, and in the future they will represent a smaller portion of the market because NFTs as a tech is getting used for other things than just PFPs, right? If we just take gaming, for example, well, all the NFTs for gaming are not PFPs, but they are going to represent a larger portion of the overall NFT market. So, once again, the NFT PFP people are just going to be shrinking and shrinking in how much they represent within the NFT market as a whole. And there will just be more and more supply, right? Supply is not going to decrease. So, yeah, that's kind of my reasoning behind floor price. And I'm still very confident in what I said. And like, don't get me wrong, there will be one or two outliers. But in general, the mania that we saw back in the days is just never going to happen again.
Like I said on one of my tweets back in 2021, 2022, NFT is not a product. NFT should be used as a byproduct of an actual product. And I think once everyone click on that, the game is gonna be changed forever. But until then, let's keep on walking.
Yep, I agree.
Kelano, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. So we need to move on. I want to ask you, what's one moment in your journey where you genuinely didn't know if you're gonna make it as a founder, as a husband, or as a man? when that doubt crept in? What's that one moment?
I think I'm very blessed to be stupidly confident in my ability to make it through life. Um, so, you probably need to be a little bit stupid or delusional, I think, to be, relentlessly optimistic about your ability to make it in life. So I wouldn't say I've had like moments where I thought, oh, I'm never going to be able to make it or whatever. Like I've had doubts, I guess, within a chapter, So for example, when I was working in the music industry, we kind of had plateaued for a while, for a year. We were doing well, but we were struggling to go to the next stage of like organizing raves of bigger size, going into festivals and stuff like that. And I remember thinking how, like the guys I'm doing this with, it was me and three other guys. And I'm like, they just don't have what it takes to go to the next
The
level.
tenacity.
Yeah, like they just don't have, they are, yeah, like I don't want to go into too many details, but I was kind of convinced that we were never going to be able to go to the next level that I was looking at with the current team we had effectively. And because we were friends, we had started this together. It was not a case of like, oh, I can fire you. We were old boys, and it was a friendship journey. And I remember thinking at the time, like, to go to the next level of whatever your life is, you're going to have to make a difficult decision, which is, either you stay in this environment and you probably
Or
have
you
peaked
have to.
already, or you need to remove yourself from this environment to, allow yourself to grow. And I remember I ended up leaving this business with my friends. And I remember sitting down in my living room one evening, and I was like, "Oh, guys, I got something to tell you." I just turned 29 at the time, I think, so it's like a decade ago now. And I was like, guys, I'm gonna stop doing this music business, music adventure. I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. I had not figured out the next plan, but I just knew that I couldn't keep doing what I was doing if I wanted to progress. So I guess that's maybe like one example to kind of relate to your question.
The dream is so the same to everyone, but the prices are actually different.
Yeah, very good way to put it.
And yeah, you have to pay the price if you want to move from this level to this level. If you are a cat dreaming to become a lion, you have to let go of the appetite of the cat.
Mm, that's well said. Yeah.
Yeah.
The cost of success has a high inflation rate.
Yes.
It doesn't
Yes.
cost the
Yes.
same as it
Yes.
did
And
last year.
it doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't. So I want to ask you about your future kids. What fashion of your life do you hope they never have to experience? I have mine. There are things that I've done. There are places that I've been that I've never, and I will never pray for my kids to ever be there or to ever experience it at all. So, what's yours?
So, what's the question exactly?
I mean, your future kids. I know you are not having kids now, but when you start having them, what fashion of your past you don't want your kid to experience? Maybe it's about a place. Maybe it's about a moment.
To be honest, like, I think you can. I mean, the only thing I would say is like, a no go is to become like a drug addict or junkie, like to physically hurt yourself, right? Other than that, like, I hope they will not physically, but I hope they will get punched in the mouth. I hope they will fail, and I hope they will encounter a lot of struggles. Actually, the one thing that I'm thinking about a lot about kids is I am in a much better financial position than my parents were, and I am worried that they will not face the struggles that I faced when I was a kid. So it's not about things I don't want them to have that I didn't have, but maybe the other way around, actually, to face the struggles I had as a kid, forced me to be resourceful, to figure shit out, to have to hustle, like I wanted a PlayStation when it came out. I had to work a summer job. I was 12. I had to work a summer job at my neighbor who had a farm, picking up grapes, for the wine. I had to have multiple jobs since the age of 12, 13, 14 during the summer, because if I wanted to buy my PlayStation, buy my scooter, like I just had to work for it because we had no money. And I think that forges the character a lot. And like the biggest thing I worry about is being comfortable in my life that they don't have to face any of those challenges. So that's probably the fear of them being too comfortable, and raising spoiled kids is probably my biggest worry.
I think a smart man will be worried. Will be worried about what you just said right now. But difficult times create great men.
Exactly.
Great times create weak men.
Yeah, a quote I really like is, lack of resources creates resourcefulness. And I think that's a very fitting description of my early life, actually. And I have more resources than my
That's
parents had.
really perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
So, moving on, we have just a few more questions and then we're going to wrap up. What's one of the hardest truths about you, even your closest friends don't know about?
Um, that's a deep question. The deep
I
one for
know.
Depot. Like I am very, very content without many people around myself. I guess I'm one of those people who is very comfortable in social settings, but I enjoy being without anyone for a long period of times. I enjoy,
You
like,
enjoy your solace.
yeah, I'm very I enjoy solitude a lot, although I'm very comfortable talking to people, talking on spaces, meeting people in real life, going to events and all that stuff. I genuinely enjoy my time alone the most. Like, I'm married, I've got my wife, obviously we live together, but we have a lot of individual time within the same house, right? Like, I'm just in my office, she's doing her own thing. Like, I just enjoy time with myself a lot, and like I don't I literally have time where there's nothing happening. I'm not listening to music, I'm just here in my office doing things in the quietest environment possible. And I really enjoy silence and solitude a lot, because I think there is also we're dishing quotes today, right? But um, great ideas happen in boredom. They don't happen
Yes.
in busy environments. So I always enjoy having my own time to think. I go to the gym, I don't put music, I just I'm just with my own thoughts at the gym, for example. And I think solitude is a really, really good place to be if you want to create new ideas in your brain. And that's one of the things I
Definitely.
enjoy the most.
Definitely. So, Kilano, we've come to the end of the show, but we have the rapid fire questions. I'm going to read them to you, just or three, and one answer. You don't have to think about it.
Go for
So,
it.
number one is hardest country to live in: France, UK, or Dubai?
Did you say hottest or best?
Hardest.
Hardest.
Yeah.
I would say that's a hard one. Because I was in France at a really early stage of my life, I guess. I would probably say UK, because the UK is going down the drain and is becoming a shithole.
Okay. Okay. Which one hurts more? Losing a product idea or losing a community?
Sorry, say that again. You cut off a bit.
Which one hurts more? Losing a product idea or losing a community?
Losing. I probably would say losing a community, because a community is harder to build than a product, I think. And if you have a
Okay.
community, you have distribution, which means that your next product already has an audience.
Distribution. Yeah. Binance job. Luck, skill, or timing?
I would say A little bit of everything,
Okay.
is the short answer.
Okay. Which founder would you never argue with again?
Probably Mert.
Okay. Okay. You are never gonna win that guy.
Yeah, he's a very smart guy.
Reply guy era. Is this dead or make a comeback?
I think it's as a business, I think it's dying.
Okay. So final question. As the guest of the day, you have to ask me we call it a day. One
Any
question.
question I want for you?
Any question.
Where do you want this podcast to be in 12 or 24 months from now?
Honestly, I wouldn't know, but the answer that I've pre-planned in my head for that is that I want us to be top 5.
Top 5
I
of
know
what?
there are so many top 5 in the world. When it comes to showing the other side of crypto entrepreneur, I want this podcast to be a top 5. I wouldn't say top 1 because people are actually doing an amazing job. There is Caleb doing something really fantastic, and then there is Andrew asked how, and these are people that are committing their life to this craft as well. We don't want to overtake anyone, but I want our names to be mentioned when people are talking about crypto podcast.
I like that.
That's where we want to be.
That's a good plan.
Thank
That's
you
a good
so
plan.
much. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. Thank you. We'll catch up on the timeline.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you. Good organization, great questions. So I'll see you in the DMs very soon.
Thank you, boss.
And thank you for
Ciao.
watching if you're still here.
This is Uncensored Grill with Tipo. No filters, no safety nets, just intelligence under pressure.